The room was dark except for the pale blue glow of a monitor, casting shadows that moved without reason. Jason's hand hovered above the mouse, shaking slightly. His breath was shallow. The email subject line read, "This is your last warning." No one else was home. The clock blinked 3:47 a.m., its light bleeding into the silence. Something about the message felt personal, like whoever sent it wasn't just a stranger. He clicked. The screen flashed white, then black. A voicemail began to play. It was his voice, but not his words. "You did this. You invited it." Jason's eyes widened. The voice sounded warped but unmistakably his. Something was wrong. He scrambled to unplug the modem, but his hands trembled. A buzzing filled the room, low and vibrating. His phone lit up with a dozen missed calls, all from unknown. He stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The walls didn't feel like they were closing in, they were. The floor seemed to rise. Then came the voice again, from every speaker, every screen. "You can't pretend you didn't know." Jason whispered, "No, please." But the voice only grew louder. "This is what you earned." It wasn't just a warning, it was a sentence. No one called him Jason anymore, not really. Not since last year. His name became a memory people avoided, like an inside joke that had turned cruel. He didn't blame them. What happened wasn't forgivable. Not to them. Maybe not to him. The email wasn't random. It knew what he tried to bury. It wasn't the kind of mistake you forget. It was the kind that grows teeth. The kind that waits in silence. He moved like someone underwater, slow and unsure. The apartment had no sound except the faint hum of the fridge and the tapping of his bare feet on cold tile. On the fridge door, a single photo remained, faded, curling at the edges. 3 people in the sun. One of them was gone. Jason stared at it, then turned away. The silence in the room wasn't empty. It was heavy. Watching. Judging. His breath caught as he felt the faintest vibration in the floor. He looked down. Nothing. But something had shifted. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" But no one answered. Just the buzzing return of memory. It had been 387 days since the accident. Jason didn't count anymore, but his body did. Each morning arrived with the same weight in his chest. Guilt is a parasite. It finds new organs to cling to. The last voicemail she left still played in his head. "Just call me back. I'm scared." He never did. And then the sirens came. Then the silence. He once told himself it wasn't his fault. But he also told himself she was fine. Both were lies. The email didn't just threaten. It resurrected. The photo on the fridge wasn't just a memory. It was a wound. Her face, frozen in a moment that had no idea it would be its last. Jason leaned against the counter, gripping its edge like it could anchor him. Outside, the sky was shifting, eerily blue bleeding into gray. It felt like morning. He whispered her name. "Emily." The fridge buzzed softly. A low hum. But the lights flickered. And the photo, he swore it moved. Jason didn't sleep anymore. Not really. He just waited for the next hour to pass. Tonight was different. The house didn't creak. It breathed. The shadows weren't still. They leaned. He walked into the hallway, each step deliberate. The buzzing returned, faint but constant. It wasn't coming from the electronics, it was in him. A dull hum behind his ribcage, like something inside was tuning in. He reached for the light switch, but nothing happened. Darkness stayed. Not total darkness, but the kind that holds secrets just out of sight. He whispered again, "Emily?" Not out of hope, but guilt. Behind him, the door clicked shut. He hadn't closed it. The hallway was longer than before. That wasn't possible, but here, logic was a memory. And memories lied. He reached the end of the hallway, but the door there wasn't his. It was older. Wooden. scratched. My, and it pulsed, slowly, like a breath. He reached for the handle, but stopped inches short. His fingers tingled. The buzzing in his chest sensed with something beyond the door. Something ancient. Something patient. He had never seen this door before. But it had always been here, waiting for him to remember. The handle was cold. Not metal. Not wood. Something else. Behind it, a sound like whispering gravel. Jason pulled back. A part of him wanted to run, but a deeper part wanted to know. To finally know. And then, the door creaked open on its own. The room beyond was empty, but something inside smiled. Jason didn't remember stepping through the door. It was as if the world blinked. And now he was here. A replica of his old childhood room. Everything was smaller, simpler, and wrong. The posters were faded but familiar. The air smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. He reached out and touched the corner of the desk where he once carved his initials. They were still there. Time hadn't moved here, it had folded. Across the room, the closet door hung open. Inside was a girl's jacket. Not his. Not Emily's. Smaller, tight, pink, dyed all. The buzzing was gone now, replaced by a low, echoing thump. Like a heartbeat, slow and steady. Jason turned toward the bed. A lump lay beneath the covers. Not moving. He approached but didn't touch it. Fear wasn't a sudden wave, it was a slow tide, rising with every breath. He whispered, "I don't want to remember." And the lump twitched. His body locked up. Something inside him already knew what was beneath. He backed away, eyes wide. The room didn't want him here, but it also didn't want him to leave. He stumbled out of the room and found himself in a hallway that didn't match his apartment. Wooden floors. Wallpaper with tiny blue flowers. This wasn't memory, it was construction. A simulation built from half-forgotten moments and guilt. He walked forward, brushing the wall with his fingertips. It felt too real. The scent of pancakes drifted from somewhere distant. It was morning here. Bright and yellow and false. A radio played softly, a woman's voice humming along to something jazzy. Jason turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hallway, his mother stood in the kitchen. She looked exactly as he remembered, before the cancer. Healthy. Smiling. Alive. Bitwer. Amiwu. You shall. Alive. She turned and said, "Jays, you want syrup or honey?" Like nothing had changed. Like time hadn't shattered her. His throat closed. "Mom," he whispered. But the scene didn't break. She just smiled wider. Syrup, then. The sound of a chair scraping the floor echoed behind him. But no one was there. He was being shown something. But by what? Jason stepped into the kitchen like walking into a photograph. The colors felt too rich. The air too warm. His mother moved with a grace that didn't match memory. It matched idealism. She set a plate down, pancakes stacked, butter melting, syrup glistening. He didn't sit. Couldn't. His legs refused to obey. "You hungry?" she asked. Her voice was soft, but behind it was something rigid. Hollow. Jason opened his mouth but said nothing. She turned back to the stove, humming again. The tune grew louder. Off key. Repeating. Then too fast. Jason clutched his ears. "Stop it," he shouted. The humming ceased instantly. The air grew still. She turned again, but her face was different now. Too smooth. Too wide. The mouth didn't smile. It stretched. "You let her die," she said. Jason stumbled backward. No. Her eyes weren't eyes. They were glass. Mirror-like. They reflected something behind him. He turned. Yeah. There was nothing. But the humming returned, coming from inside him. He ran. But there was nowhere to run to. The hallway repeated itself. Identical turn after identical turn. Every door led back to the same place. He opened one, his high school locker room. Another, Emily's childhood bedroom. Another, darkness. Jason fell to his knees. "This isn't real," he whispered. The hallway flickered, like a glitch in a program. The wallpaper peeled away to static. "You chose not to hear her," a voice whispered from inside the walls. "You chose silence." Jason covered his ears. "It was a mistake. I was scared." The floor beneath him rippled like water. His hands passed through it. Something grabbed his wrist. Cold. Wame, light. Thin. Human. Wa. But not alive. He yanked back and crawled away, heart pounding. The voice returned. "Mistakes have gravity." Ahead, a door pulsed with a dull red light. It didn't belong here. But it was meant for him. That much he knew. And he wasn't alone anymore. Jason stood before the red-lit door, chest heaving. The floor was still soft, pulsing like flesh beneath his shoes. The knob was blackened, metal charred as if burned. He reached out, this time without hesitation. The door swung open with no resistance. The room was not a room, it was a void. No floor. No ceiling. Only a thin bridge of light leading to a chair. On it sat a figure. Female. Mid-20s. Hair long obscuring her face. He knew that posture. That silence. "Emily," he said. The figure didn't move. But the room breathed. He stepped onto the light bridge. Every step echoed into the abyss. As he approached, the figure slowly lifted her head. Not Emily. Not entirely. The face was hers, but altered. Hollow eyes. No mouth. Her voice arrived without lips. "You never said goodbye." Jason sank to his knees, shattered. "I didn't know how." She stood. "Now you will." The bridge vanished beneath him. Jason didn't fall. He descended. Slowly. Weightlessly. As if grief had become gravity. The void didn't swallow him. It held him. Cradled him like something that had been waiting. Darkness gave way to faint light, dull amber and pulsing. He landed on something soft, like dust. Around him whispers churned like wind, voices layered and low. Names. Names. Dates. Regrets. He stood dizzy. His breath came in gasps, but not from fear, shame. Before him rose a great wall, impossibly tall and etched with words. Names. Thousands. He stepped closer. His fingers brushed a familiar one, Emily Reed. Below it, you ignored the call. His chest tightened. More names glowed faintly as he passed. People he'd known briefly. People he'd ghosted. A boy from college who'd texted him at 3 a.m. A coworker who'd cried in the break room. And then, his own name. Jason Reed. Beneath it, you let silence answer. He fell to his knees. This wasn't judgment. It was inventory. He ran his fingers over the stone. The names were warm to the touch, like skin. Each one pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. The more he stared, the more he realized the wall wasn't built, it had grown. Like a hive of memory, fed by silence. The whispers sharpened now, echoing louder. One voice cut through, Emily's. Not angry. Not mournful. Just quiet. "You were supposed to answer." He turned sharply. The void behind him had changed. A mirror stood where nothing had been. Full length, silver frame, glass rippling. He stepped toward it. The reflection was him, but not now, then. Younger. Carefree. Laughing on a park bench beside Emily. She reached for his hand in the glass. But the reflection didn't take it. It pulled away. Jason whispered, "I didn't mean to." The mirror cracked. Her image held his eyes until it shattered completely. The void grew colder. The wall dimmed. Regret had been seen. Now it wanted something more. Jason backed away from the mirror. Behind him the wall had vanished. In its place stood doors. Dozens of them. Each door labeled with a single moment. Call missed, message deleted, looked away, lied, did nothing. They weren't accusations. They were facts. He stepped toward one labeled call, missed, 2:12 a.m. His finger trembled as he reached for it. The door creaked open to reveal a hospital hallway. Jason stepped in. Cold fluorescent lights buzzed above. A woman sobbed into her hands on a waiting room bench. Emily's mother. He recognized her instantly. Time warped as Jason moved through the scene, invisible. He passed himself, seated, head down, phone in his lap, unread messages glowing on screen. A nurse approached him. She asked for you. He never looked up, never moved. He left that night before sunrise. The door slammed shut behind him, ejecting him back into the void. One door remained open. Delete voicemail. The open door beckoned him. Jason stepped inside without resistance. This time it wasn't a place. It was a moment. Frozen. No. A paused voicemail screen. The phone lay on a kitchen counter, time-stamped 3 minutes before the crash. Jason approached it like an artifact. The screen flickered, then played. Her voice emerged, fragile, uncertain. Jays, I think someone's following me. I need to hear you. There was a pause. Then the sound of breathing. Then tires screeching. Static. Silence. Jason fell back against the counter. I didn't know, he whispered. But the phone responded, her voice again. You chose not to. The moment stretched. The kitchen twisted, walls stretching out like pulled fabric. Guilt here was alive. It moved. He turned to leave, but the door was gone. He was trapped in this choice. Not to change it, but to finally feel it. He pressed play again. This time, he didn't flinch. Time bent. The kitchen dissolved. Jason stood in a space of fractured sound, echoes of choices. He could hear laughter, tears, typing, silence. All of it layered. This place wasn't about punishment. It was about weight. About truth. In the center of the void now stood a figure. Emily. Whole. Whole. Not dead. Not broken. Her eyes held him like truth made flesh. You carry the echo, she said. But you never listened. Jason stepped closer. I'm listening now. Her head tilted. Then prove it. He didn't understand. She extended her hand. Let me in. A pause. Then everything rushed forward. The crash, the email, the silence, the phone calls. Every moment slammed into him like a wave. His knees buckled, but he stayed standing. I'm sorry, he whispered. Emily's voice softened. Then, speak it where it matters. She stepped into him, and he awoke on the floor of his apartment. The monitor blinked once, then turned off. Jason woke on the floor, but the room didn't greet him with familiarity. His apartment was still, but altered. The walls were too clean. The clock had no hands. Outside, the streetlight flickered in a pattern that felt intentional. He stood, unsure if this was reality or another layer of the test. His breath fogged slightly, though the room wasn't cold. On the desk, the laptop screen glowed white. No icons. Just a blinking cursor. Prompt appeared, tell the truth. Jason stared. Then typed, I failed her. Nothing happened. He tried again. I was afraid. Still nothing. He whispered, I let her die. The screen flashed red, then back to white. This wasn't confession, it was confrontation. His phone buzzed. New voicemail. He played it. Emily's voice calm this time. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. His legs buckled. The weight of those words didn't pierce, they crushed. The cursor blinked again, waiting. Jason wasn't being asked to admit. He was being asked to remember. The screen dissolved into static, then morphed into a video feed, grainy, handheld footage. Jason's chest tightened. He recognized the scene instantly. The last time he saw Emily. They were arguing in the parking lot, her face tired, his distant. The audio lagged slightly behind the images. "Why won't you just talk to me?" she had asked. "Because I don't know what to say," his recorded self replied. He remembered walking away. But now, the video lingered. She stood there longer than he recalled, looking back at him, mouthing something the audio didn't catch. Jason leaned in. The words were clear now. "I waited." The video looped. Again and again. Jason covered his face, shaking. "I didn't see this before." The screen paused on her image, eyes full of hope, not anger. She never hated him. She needed him. And he walked away, not out of malice, but fear. Fear that now had shape, sound, and teeth. Jason stood motionless, watching the loop one final time before the screen went black. His reflection appeared in it, older, heavier. Guilt had aged him. Behind him, the door creaked open. No sound came through, just stillness. He turned. The hallway beyond was different now. It looked like her apartment. The couch. The rug. The picture frame with the two of them. But she wasn't there. Instead, every object was cracked, slightly broken, like the memory couldn't hold its shape anymore. He stepped inside carefully. The silence screamed. On the table, her phone. Battery long dead, but the screen displayed one thing: draft message. "I forgive you." Jason's knees gave way. Not because he wanted forgiveness, but because he didn't think he deserved it. Why would she? He started, but couldn't finish. Because he never gave her the chance. He had run, and running has echoes. Some louder than footsteps, some louder than screams. The apartment around him rippled and collapsed into darkness. One spotlight now illuminated Jason, standing alone. Across from him another spotlight flicked on, revealing himself. Not a reflection. Not a memory. A double. Same age, whoa. Same face. But his eyes were colder. Hardened. "You're not fooling anyone," the double said. Jason stepped forward. "Who are you?" The voice responded with venom. "I'm the version of you that answered. That didn't run. That picked up the phone." Jason flinched. "You're not real." The double smiled. "And yet, here you are, built entirely from regret." The two circled each other, slowly. "Why now?" Jason asked. The double's smile faded. "Because you finally stayed long enough to feel it." The lights blinked. For a second, they were surrounded by everyone he'd failed. A sea of faces in the dark. All silent. All waiting. The double stepped back and whispered, "Now, show them who you are without the excuses." Jason stepped forward, finally meeting his other self. "No more running. No more denial." "You think you're better than me?" he asked. The double replied calmly, "No, just honest." Jason stared, breathing hard. Then, "Let's be honest together." He reached out and touched the double's chest. The skin burned cold, like memory resisting change. But it held. The double's eyes flickered. "She's still waiting," it said. "Not out there. In here." It placed a hand over Jason's heart. A pulse thudded through him, raw and sharp. Then, with a final exhale, the double collapsed into smoke. Jason stood alone once again. The darkness lifted, revealing a quiet morning light seeping through his apartment window. He wasn't healed. He wasn't forgiven. But he was here. Fully. The screen flickered one last time and displayed a new message. "Now, speak it aloud." Jason took a breath and began. Jason sat at his desk, morning light streaming through the half-drawn curtains. His apartment looked ordinary again, but he wasn't. Not anymore. The screen was blank now, the message gone. The silence wasn't threatening. It was expectant. He opened his email, fingers hesitating over the keys. No new messages. No threats. Nothing at all. It was as if it never happened. But Jason knew better. The damage wasn't digital. It was buried in his routines, his reactions, his refusal to face what he'd buried. He clicked on the voicemail tab again. Her last message waited, unplayed. He hovered. Then, with a breath, pressed play. Emily's voice played, soft and shaking. I don't know where you are, but I need you. Please just call back. Jason didn't cry. He let the words pass through him. Not as punishment, but as reminder. This time he didn't delete it. He saved it. Renamed the file. She waited. Because now, so would he. Later that day, Jason walked the city. No headphones. No distractions. He passed places he hadn't visited in years. The bookstore where they used to argue over poetry. The bench where they last laughed. The street where he first said nothing when she needed everything. People passed him, unaware of the storm he carried inside. He paused outside the cafe where Emily used to leave her notebook. It was closed now. Boarded, forgotten. Jason rested his hand on the door. Through the glass, dust danced in the sunbeams. It hadn't changed. Just like her voicemail. Just like him. He sat on the curb across the street, pulling out his phone. No new messages. No ghosts. Just memory. Dust. A young couple laughed nearby, and something in their tone broke him a little. He whispered, "You would have liked them." Then silence again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was a space being made, for truth, for presence, for whatever came next. That evening, Jason visited Emily's grave. He hadn't been in over a year. Not since the funeral, when his words had failed him and his guilt locked his throat shut. The cemetery was quiet. Overcast skies hung low, threatening rain. The headstone was simple. Emily Rose Reed. 1997-2023. She believed in people. Jason knelt before it, fingers tracing the engraving. I didn't come to say goodbye, he said. Because you never really left. He took the saved voicemail from his phone, placed it beneath a smooth rock by her stone. So someone else can hear your voice too, he whispered. His voice broke. You deserve better, but I'm trying. Thunder rumbled in the distance, but no rain fell. He stood slowly. This won't fix anything, but maybe it's a start. As he walked away, he didn't look back. Not from rejection. From trust. That what needed to be said had finally been spoken. That night, Jason returned to the apartment. It felt colder, but not from temperature. Something had been released. A weight. He stood in front of the mirror, really looking at himself. He saw the tired eyes, the hollow beneath them, the lines grief carved too early. But also, stillness. Honesty. He reached into the closet and pulled out the old hoodie she used to steal. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. He didn't cry. He folded it gently and placed it in a box. Then sealed it. He wasn't discarding her. He was letting go of the version of her that existed only to haunt him. On his desk, the email thread had vanished completely. The laptop screen now displayed only one thing, a blinking cursor on a blank note. He sat down. Began to type. Not a confession. Not an apology. Just a letter. To her. To himself. To anyone who'd ever kept silent because silence felt safer than sorrow. Jason finished the letter just after midnight. He didn't read it back. He didn't need to. It wasn't for anyone else. He saved it. Printed it. Folded it once. Then slipped it into an envelope marked, "For when the silence returns." He set it inside a drawer, not locked away, just resting. The apartment no longer felt like a cage. Just space. He stepped onto the balcony, the night cool and alive. City lights blinked in the distance like far-off stars still trying. He breathed in. Deep, and full. Then, for the first time in a long time, The breath didn't catch. It moved through him, unresisted. Below, a siren echoed. Someone screamed. Somewhere, someone lost someone else. But here, in this moment, Jason stood. Not cured, not redeemed, but real, present. He whispered her name, Emily. And though no voice answered, he didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Jason stood in his living room, watching the sun rise through the window. It wasn't a symbolic moment. It just was. Another morning. Another breath. The weight hadn't lifted, but he was stronger beneath it. He sat on the floor with a cup of coffee, letting the quiet fill the room without resistance. For the first time, it didn't echo accusation. It sounded like peace, unfamiliar, small, but real. He opened the box where he'd stored the hoodie, unfolded it, pressed his hand against the fabric. "You're not a ghost," he said aloud, unsure who he was speaking to. Maybe her. Maybe himself. The apartment creaked in response, not ominous, just alive. He sipped slowly. On the wall, the photo of them together still hung. It hadn't changed. But now, he could look at it without his stomach turning. It wasn't forgiveness he'd found. It was clarity. Not all damage can be repaired. Some of it just needs to be understood. He walked to the edge of the neighborhood park, the one Emily used to love. Trees leaned in the breeze, casting long shadows over the cracked path. It had rained earlier, pavement still damp, air thick with earthy scent. Jason's shoes stuck slightly as he walked. The bench where she used to sit remained untouched. Birds gathered around it, unconcerned. He sat down. His shoulders sank with a breath. On the bench, he placed a folded letter. Not the one he kept. A new one. Short, honest. "I remember," it read. He tucked it beneath a rusted plaque dedicated to the park's founders. Not to be found. Just to be left. As he stood to leave, a child ran by, chasing a red kite. Jason looked up. The sky was bruised but clearing. Life hadn't paused for him. It had moved. And now, so had he. Not far. Not fast. But forward. That evening, Jason cleaned the apartment, not to erase, but to reclaim. Every drawer opened. Every object questioned. What was memory? What was burden? The difference was subtle, but important. He found a photo album buried beneath old bills. Inside, images he'd avoided. Emily's graduation. Their first apartment. The blurry photo she took after making him laugh too hard. He sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping page after page. Some pictures hurt. Others healed. He stopped at one where she was mid-laugh, hair covering half her face. It struck him, how alive she'd always been. Not just in moments, but in movement. She deserved to be remembered in motion, not frozen in tragedy. He scanned the photo, printed a copy, then wrote on the back, "Still moving." He placed it on the fridge, replacing the old curling one. Not because he forgot, but because he finally remembered clearly. The next day, Jason found himself writing again. Not a letter, not a journal. Just words. Fragments. Thoughts. Half-finished sentences that didn't need completion. "If silence is survival, speaking is resurrection," he wrote. He didn't know what it would become. Maybe nothing. Maybe something that helped someone else. But it didn't matter. Writing wasn't the destination. It was the mirror. He opened a blank document. Titled it, "Things I Was Too Late to Say." Then just let the words come. Not perfect. Not pretty. Just honest. He typed until the light outside shifted into gold. Until his fingers ached. Until he felt hollow in the way that invites something new. He leaned back in his chair, eyes burning. "You'd hate this title," he whispered with a half-smile. Then, save the file. Not shared. Not posted. Just saved. A step taught. Not toward redemption, but toward voice. His voice. No longer buried. No longer borrowed. Just his. At midnight, Jason stood in front of the mirror again. Not to reflect. To face. His own eyes didn't look away this time. He studied himself the way someone studies an old book, fragile, worn, but still legible. "I forgive you," he whispered. The words didn't change the air, didn't unlock anything, but they stayed, lingered, and that was enough. He walked into the living room, turned off all the lights, and sat in the dark. No phone, no music, no sound, just the hum of a quiet night. The world outside carried on, cars passing, wind brushing leaves, distant laughter echoing from somewhere unknown. Jason didn't need answers anymore. He didn't need a voice to reply. Silence didn't frighten him now. It held space. And inside that space he simply existed. Not healed. Not broken. Just present. And sometimes that's the bravest thing you can be. The next morning arrived without ceremony. No revelations. No final visions. Just the sound of birds through the window and the low hum of the city waking up. Jason stood barefoot in the kitchen, pouring coffee. No dramatic music played. No shadow loomed. Just breath. Just now. He checked his phone. No messages. No warnings. The folder where the email had once existed was still gone. It had left nothing behind, except everything. He stared out the window, watching the wind move the branches. Each sway felt like punctuation. Not an end, but a pause. The guilt hadn't left. But it didn't rule him. He could feel it, and still move. That was new. That was something. He whispered her name again, not out of grief this time, but gratitude. Emily. The sound didn't hurt. It warmed. The world hadn't changed. But he had. And that, perhaps, was the only ending worth believing in. Later he sat on the apartment floor, sorting through old papers. A few photos. Receipts from forgotten nights. Scribbled notes. Among them, he found a printed email. Not the one that started it all, but one she'd sent long before. Subject: "Hey, just checking in." He hadn't replied. He remembered why: busy, distracted, anxious. Now, it read like a lifeline. He read every word like a confession. The email ended with, "It's okay if you can't talk right now. I just wanted you to know I'm here." His eyes stung. How many times had she said that? How many ways had he missed it? He folded the email, placed it gently inside the same drawer where he'd left the letter. Some messages don't demand answers. Some are just meant to be remembered. His silence had cost him everything. But her words, those soft, unnoticed ones, had survived. That was their echo now. Not blame, but offering. He began walking again. Not just for errands, but with purpose. Streets that once felt haunted were now familiar. The city was still chaotic. Horns, sirens, noise. But he didn't flinch from it anymore. Each sound belonged. He passed a mural he'd never noticed before. A woman painted in silhouette, arms stretched upward, surrounded by falling stars. It stopped him. Not because it looked like Emily, but because it looked like release. Underneath it, a quote was scrawled: "We are more than the moments we regret." Jason stared at it for a long time, then took a picture. He didn't share it, just kept it. Proof that he was still collecting meaning, not erasing the past, but finding shape in it. He turned, continued walking. No destination. Just motion. The kind that didn't need a reason. Just the will to keep going. That, he realized, was what survival looked like now. That night, he revisited the email folder. Not because he expected it to return, but because something inside still searched for finality. He clicked, waited. Nothing loaded. Just a blank screen and a blinking cursor. Still there. Still waiting. He typed one final sentence, I won't run from you again. Then closed the laptop without saving. Some truths didn't need to be preserved. They needed to be lived. The apartment felt quiet, but not empty. It held everything he'd faced, and everything he hadn't. The walls, the desk, the echo of her voice in memory. All of it was real. All of it remained. But now, it was just part of him. Not a cage. Not a threat. Just a history. He stood, turned off the screen and whispered into the darkness. It mattered. You mattered. No reply came. Just stillness. And in that stillness, peace. In the early hours, Jason stood once more on the balcony. The city slept. A breeze tugged at his shirt. Lights blinked in slow rhythm across windows and rooftops. He closed his eyes. No visions. No voices. Just the whisper of everything he'd carried. Everything survived. He whispered aloud, one last time. You weren't just a warning. The words hung there, suspended in breath, in memory, in air too cold to hold sound. And then, release. Not dramatic. Just gentle. Like fog fading in morning sun. And today, what remained wasn't closure. It was knowing that the silence he once feared had simply waited for him to listen. And now, at last he had. Not to forget. Not to forgive. Just to remember the truth he'd buried in fear. The email was gone. But its echo would always live in him. In the way he breathed. In the way he stayed. In the words he would now speak.